Oh, okay. Okay. Because I wasn't sure if I was going to have to go back and give Doug the.
Usually I get that.
The term conspiracy theorist is intentionally used by FBI historically in order to create dissent and fragmentation within protest movements. It's incredibly effective. Why would Google care to discredit it? Well, because Google is guilty of it. Google does it. They're leading they utilize this on a routine basis.
Welcome back to the conclusion of our interview with the renowned scientist Dr. Robert Malone and his latest book, PsyWar, Enforcing the New World Order.
Just to cross some T's and dot some I's, we didn't invent the term PsyWar. It is used by the division down in Fort Bragg that is the main Army division, but most of the PsyWar activities in the U.S. Army are in Army Reserves. They have units all across the United States, and notably a very large one just outside of Silicon Valley for some reason. The current Secretary of Defense was actually the Lieutenant General in charge of the Fort Bragg unit when the current PsyWar policies were set in place, and he signed off, which includes clauses that the PsyWar military Army unit can be deployed against civilians in the event of a national emergency, which was the case. And there's also now been disclosure. I talk in the book about the 77th Brigade, which is the analogous group at brigade in British Armed Forces that works closely with U.S., in addition to MI6 and CIA and all that stuff. But they 77th Brigade deployed soldiers out throughout England, surreptitiously undercover, to engage in PsyWar activities. PsyWar is a core tenet now of modern NATO policy. They call it hybrid warfare, and they prefer psychological warfare over kinetic warfare, over missiles and guns and bullets. It's a lot cheaper, and it's a lot more effective. And an example of its effectiveness was that it was deployed widely in the color revolutions, particularly in the Arab Spring. That was one of the first major deployments of Twitter as a weapon, by the way, was during Arab Spring. So this tech is there. It's being used. It appears to be increasingly integrated in as part of pharmaceutical industry marketing. It's used by, so it's really an extension of marketing, this kind of continuum from marketing, propaganda, psychological warfare, neuro-linguistic programming, all of these technologies that basically get, we've all heard about subliminal advertising. Subliminal advertising is another thing that's come out of psychology that teaches like neuro-linguistic programming methods for accessing our subconscious as well as our conscious mind. And this is not going to go away. There has been because no one's pushed back, and we try to in the book, there's been a consensus, particularly, throughout the world, communist China, Russia, the NATO countries, etc., the companies that have the capabilities to field psychological warfare, a tech that was largely developed for offshore combat against the likes of Al-Qaeda. So this is fifth generation warfare. At the Hoover Institute a number of years ago, before the COVID crisis hit, there was a lecture from Barack Obama at the Hoover in which he explicitly stated that it was going to be necessary to deploy censorship in order to preserve democracy. And that's become a common theme. It's a theme that's echoed by the United Nations, World Economic Forum, World Health Organization, European Union, the UK government, United States government, Canadian government, New Zealand government, Australian government. They all believe that it's okay to deploy this against their own citizens. I argue in the book and elsewhere that the tech is so powerful when a government decides that it's acceptable to deploy this technology against their own citizens, the concept of sovereignty, autonomy, consent of the governed, all of that goes into modern concepts of the Westphalian nation state and its relationship with the kind of classical liberal position of our founding fathers, the relationship between the citizens and the state becomes completely obsolete. The tech seeks and is effectively enabled to control all information that you access. You're referring to Google. Google selectively reporting this, that, or the other, and not allowing you to access other things. And for instance, just to give another example, Robert Epstein, unrelated to Epstein, and his team have demonstrated that the ephemeral content that Google pushes, this is the little things that you get when you go onto Google News or when you log onto your browser or whatever, you get these feeds, this information, banners, etc. That's ephemeral content. It goes and then it's gone. That's all tuned specifically to you through artificial intelligence in order to persuade you one way or the other. And they can move undecided voters by 20 points. It's been demonstrated repeatedly, and they do so across the world in elections. So we talk about Russian election interference. We never talk about Google election interference. Google election interference is far more pervasive. Okay, so the tech seeks to control all information, all thought, all belief and feeling. Okay, so that this is kind of deep, Doug. So take a moment, allow yourself to just open your mind a little bit. This sounds very tinfoil hat, but this is the nature of the tech. It seeks to control information, feelings, beliefs, thoughts. And it's rooted in modern psychology, and it's actually very effective in doing so. And what happens as soon as you enter any kind of a media landscape, I refer to modern media as being a surreal environment, referring to the images of Dali, where, for instance, the famous time image, where everything is fluid and distorted, okay? In modern information warfare environments, which is basically everything that you're exposed to, except perhaps, and one could even argue that these alt media are a form of PsyWar in what we're sharing. We're sharing some information. So the tech involves creation of a very surreal environment, media landscape. And anytime you interact with television, your cell phone applications, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, Google, Amazon, you're in a media landscape in which nothing can be assumed to be truth. The only way that you can discern truth in this environment is through the application of your own mind, knowledge base, and basically your soul. That little voice that you have that says, this is truth speech, as Matthias Desmet speaks. And you pick that up through a number of subtle signals that you receive when you're interacting, when you're watching somebody, their facial expressions, their tone of voice. There's a whole lot of information that's coming to you that cannot be so readily manipulated. So everything that you're encountering is being manipulated. And in this synthetic environment of modern media, what has developed is a logic that's very much part of the frame of mind of younger people that have grown up with video games, for instance, which is that truth is whatever you believe it to be. This is what underpins the gender theology of multiple genders. You are the gender that you believe you are, as opposed to your biologic gender.
Neil deGrasse Tyson said that very thing, and he's supposed to be this really smart scientist. And
so really smart, really smart scientism.
Exactly.
So in this this again, I'm trying to make this accessible. If you want to appreciate the modern psychological warfare battlefield, which is to say everything that you're exposed to in terms of information is all being controlled and manipulated, you have to understand that although there is objective truth, in my opinion, everything that you're receiving is being manipulated and processed in order to get you to have certain feelings, beliefs, etc. So you can't really trust anything. You have to seek multiple sources of information. And this is the even more insidious part. You can't tell who is friend and who is foe in this modern environment, this battlefield environment, because there are all kinds of false flag agents, disruptors, etc., notoriously spreading accusations. Just to give one example, I've been repeatedly accused of being controlled opposition. What is controlled opposition? Well, it means that I am actually acting on behalf of those that in my case, that I am purporting to be disagreeing with. I'm actually acting on their behalf surreptitiously through some sort of three-dimensional chess thing.
Basically, you're on Pfizer's payroll somewhere down the line, right?
Or Moderna's, or the government's, or whatever.
Right.
Or I'm actually CIA or whatever.
Yeah, right. Of course. Yeah.
The thing is, controlled opposition is, so there's a bunch of key terms here. Controlled opposition is one of them. Controlled opposition, conspiracy theorist, just to kind of start the ball rolling. Conspiracy theorist was something that was intentionally inserted into public dialogue by the CIA after the assassination of the president. So anybody that was speculating about the grassy knoll, about the role of the CIA, that it wasn't actually at the Texas Book Depository where the shot that was hit him in the front as opposed to the back of the head, because that's what the new data demonstrate, is that he was actually killed from the front.
We just did a show on that. We have studies that say the opposite, and you'll have to send us that, because we're always open to re-examine the facts around.
So we cite a book in our book that goes over those data and does reconstructions. A radiologist that's very experienced, that's done the reconstructive work. But in any case, that term was inserted intentionally by the CIA. The term conspiracy theorist was inserted into public dialogue intentionally by the FBI, largely in the context of the Vietnam War protest, and specifically the Native American Indian uprisings that occurred. And so the term conspiracy theorist is intentionally used by FBI historically in order to create dissent and fragmentation within protest movements. It's incredibly effective. It basically, it propagates paranoia within a community. But there's multiple chaos agents that appear to be government funded or pharma funded that have been active all the way through this. And they are still active. You can watch them shift their focus between different communities. One of them was very involved in disrupting the trucker protests. It just goes on and on. So in this environment, you not only cannot know what is true, because everything is spun, manipulated, and selectively reported, and advocacy reported, etc. You can't know who's friend and foe. And here's the insidious part about that, Doug, is that if you can't know who's friend and who is foe, that further drives your social isolation. You become in an environment where you can't even have confidence. Like, for instance, a recent example, Calley and Casey Means published a book in which they talked about food and nutrition and the importance of good food and clean food, and the role of the, among other things, in these 2 interviews with Tucker Carlson and Joe Rogan that went so big, they talked about the role of the tobacco industry in buying into big food now, processed food, and how processed food is designed to be addictive, just like tobacco in its marketing was designed to be addictive. And so suddenly, because they had these 2 big hits with Tucker and Rogan, they were catapulted into fame. Their book went to the top of the bestseller lists. And then a lot of the people that had been nattering about me being controlled opposition suddenly were turning and attacking Calley and Casey Means, using the same kind of logic. When you see the same actors moving from subject matter to subject matter to subject matter with these similar attack strategies, that's one of the hallmarks that these people are actually what they're attacking, accusing others of being, controlled opposition. These are chaos agents.
Dr. Malone, real quick, 5 years ago, I would have classified this conversation as a conspiracy theory. So, who does MAGA have who's going to stop all this and protect us and help me understand what's true?
Well, so there's this new director of national intelligence, in theory, that's been appointed. And Tulsi Gabbard now is being attacked as basically controlled opposition.
Well, I thought she was a Russian. I thought she was for sure Russian.
Yeah, and absolutely, and with deep Russian ties. The Russia thing is trotted out routinely. Together with, they have these tropes that they use again and again, and they deploy them worldwide. That's one of the lovely things about all the stupid travel I've had to do over the last few years. My wife's goal for this year is not to make it into United Airlines premier category.
Hey, so Dr. Malone, I'm trying to think of a practical example to kind of dovetail off of what you've been talking about. And one that comes to mind, and you've talked about this in the past, and it's this mass formation psychosis. So right. I think back to the whole pandemic and how so many people, were just buying into things like, having to wear a mask. I mean, you see people in a car, you see people outdoor wearing a mask. I had friends who are conservatives.
I've seen pictures of people swimming with masks.
Yeah, exactly. And so I've got friends who are, some of them are, I got liberal friends, conservative friends, and some of my conservative friends were arguing for the masks. And I'm thinking, it reminds me of the Bible verse where it talks about how even the elect will be fooled. And so where you talk about, how do you even tell friend from foe? To me, it really hits home when you talk about this mass formation psychosis, because we got to witness it. Now, the psychology community will deny that it exists, but we saw it firsthand, and now we know how people are going to be so easily moved by the mark of the beast. It was unbelievable and unbelievably revealing.
Yeah, these things, I'm so glad you brought that up, Fred, because that is in the logic train that I like to build. That's one of the next steps. Once you understand that in this media warfare environment, information warfare environment, we find ourselves in this torturous terrain where we can't be assured of anything that's true or false. Everything is subjective and based on feelings and emotions, and all that's being actively manipulated. And we can't tell who's truly friend and foe because of these various strategies, false flag operations, chaos agents, etc.
Well, see, I remember when the whole mask thing first came out, if you researched it yourself using Google, you could find a lot of the studies before COVID that would argue against the effectiveness of masks worn by the public. I think going back to the Spanish flu. And then maybe a year later, you can't find that stuff anymore. You have to go to page 10 of the Google search to find anything.
You can even find it. So that's another thing, while we're on that tangent. The Wayback Machine is getting scrubbed.
Yeah.
And I've caught it being edited in real time. And when I used to talk about that from time to time, and I got some pushback from the Wayback Machine people And their comment back to me was that, well, these this historic repository of information, the Wayback Machine, they still retain all those items, but they've just been deselected so that the public can't view them in response to governmental pressure, typically. So but it's absolutely, Bannon said this 3 years ago, that the reason to buy books is because our collective memory, as archived in the internet, will be manipulated and scrubbed, much like George Orwell predicted in 1984 with the Ministry of Truth. But getting to the thread you were talking about, Matthias Desmet, my good friend, again, I just saw him a few weeks ago at another Brownstone retreat, and he's again being attacked by the same people. He's another one that's had it really hard. So Matthias is a professor, full professor, who studies these issues having to do with totalitarianism and the origins of totalitarianism, which goes back to Freud, through Hannah Arendt, and all the way back to Plato and the allegory of the cave. Is really, it's a recurrent thread. You can, once you know it, it's one of those things, once you see it, and the Bible provides multiple examples, once you see it, you can look back in history and see it occurring again and again and again and again. And it's good to have, but this is the truth about a lot of things. Once we have a language and a structure to understand something, then suddenly things make sense in ways that we hadn't appreciated before. And Matthias actually didn't recognize, despite teaching this, not only being a student, but a professor of this topic area, he didn't realize that it was happening at first during the COVID crisis. And then suddenly he was teaching away and he had an epiphany. Oh my God, what we're experiencing now is exactly what Hannah Arendt described, et cetera, back through this historic record that I talked about. And so he began developing it more, and he gave some podcasts that were labeled as mass formation psychosis, which I saw, and which, like you, when I watched them, it was like I got hit in the head with a brick. I've had a few of those experiences during the COVID times, and this was one of them. Suddenly, things made sense to me. This kind of collective crazy and anger and all of that, the projection, all these things that I was observing, the division of families. I mean, our younger son still doesn't talk to us. It just tore families apart. And so when I listened to Matthias through podcasts describing this, I took that and tried to make it easier for people to access, because he's Belgian. So mass formation doesn't really translate directly into English the way that it was intended. What he's talking about is the creation of groups or movements or masses. So when he says mass formation, what he's talking about is the creation of a group consensus around a totalitarian leader, a central leader. And the core of his thesis is that what happens when we have social fragmentation and we have this destruction of community, we have loss of a sense of purpose. He refers to bullshit jobs. The bullshit jobs are the ones that Elon and Ramaswamy are going to get rid of with Doge, for instance, okay? But bullshit jobs are all around us, right? When we go to any kind of government interaction, whether you go to the renew your driver's license or whatever, you encounter bullshit jobs on a routine basis, right? So Matthias's thesis was that when people become socially isolated and fragmented, such as during the lockdown, perfect setup for this, then they become very susceptible, because we have this deep inner need for connectedness with other humans. They become very susceptible to a process wherein a leader can enunciate a set of statements. I feel your pain. This is, by the way, these things are wrapped in. These are often exploited by people that build viral videos intentionally on YouTube. So you basically want to express, I understand you, I understand your particular conspiracy world, whatever your belief system is, and I confirm it. It's true, absolutely. And furthermore, I have the little thing that will resolve your pain, your psychological pain, which that pain is coming in part from being socially isolated, because we have this deep need to be connected with other humans. And I feel your pain, and I have the magic thing that will resolve your pain. Now, in the case of Tony Fauci, who was one of those leaders, remember he came on, he said all these things. He really wasn't supposed to be in that position, but there was a power vacuum. And he became the spokesperson globally. And he said, I have these magic things that will fix this, that will enable you to get back to normal. They are masking, social distancing, the jab, remdesivir, but don't take any other drugs. But in this situation where they all become socially isolated, an authoritarian leader can come in and say, I have this magic solution, I feel your pain, I confirm your suspicions, and I have your solution. And they will psychologically bond to that central leader, that authoritarian leader. And it's a very artificial bond, because it is, instead of this kind of diffuse organic matrix that we normally have, it's to some central authority that's distant. And that's how authoritarian and totalitarianism occurs. Now, totalitarianism is different from dictatorships. What'll happen is, once you have this process, this mass formation process happen, then people are wedded to this central idea, this central structure and belief system, and you can eliminate, the authoritarian leader could die, be assassinated, become discredited, and they will just transfer this to someone else. Once this process has occurred, they're readily manipulated, and they'll transfer it, to Joe Biden or whatever. It's very useful in a Machiavellian political campaign kind of context. And that is Matthias's core thesis. Now, when I spoke about this on Rogan, I used the term mass formation psychosis, which we were then attacked for by Bregan and others who were saying that you shouldn't use the term psychosis. And we were attacked by, among other things, in The Guardian, I think it was, they interviewed a British researcher who said, oh, no, this is all false. This isn't real psychology. Well, he happened to be a nudge researcher. So basically, he's busy developing the tech to create mass formation. And he was being quoted as an expert trying to debunk it. And the term went nuclear on the web. This is one of those moments where people say you broke the internet. And the searches for this, because there was very little, just went exponential on Google. And of course,
and so just to interject, I read this one article, and this one guy who was critical of this whole mass formation psychosis, he said, among other things, it's a form of disrespect, and it's not part of psychology. So, okay, so does that really say that it's not true?
It's not in the Diagnostics and Statistical Manual, the DSM, which is the American Psychiatric Association's core Bible. However you want to put it, because the DSM is all focused on individual psychopathology, not group psychopathology. There's nothing in the DSM about group psychopathology, as if it doesn't exist, when obviously it does. And so all of those arguments that were loaded out were just garbage, more propaganda. To discredit it. And why would Google care to discredit it? Well, because Google is guilty of it. Google does it. They're a leading they utilize this on a routine basis. And so when the searching, and Steve Kirsch gets a gold star for this, when the searching for mass formation psychosis went exponential on Google didn't have pre-selected redirects that they would guide all these people to. And so it was pulling up the videos of Matthias and the videos of me, which Google didn't want. They wanted to discredit that. And so what they did is they found some obscure podcaster that had been shooting spitwads at us and that had like 100 views. And they manually redirected all of those searches to that guy's thing and away from the podcasts and broadcasts and information that had been much more widely seen previously, because obviously they wanted to discredit it. And then they denied that they did it. But Steve Kirsch grabbed screenshots demonstrating it happening in real time. This is, in terms of psychological warfare and PsyWar, et cetera, and information manipulation, this is a great little case study among many.
Yeah, classic example. So would you say that Fauci was one of these totalitarian figures that people group behind? And the reason I ask that is, because my father-in-law, who's a conservative, when Fauci first came out and was saying all this stuff about mandates and lockdowns, he was like, yeah, this is a really smart guy. And I told my father-in-law, I said, Chuck, we got to be leery of this guy. And he's like, why? And it's like, because the left loves him. That for me, that was an alarm bell. I don't know if it was for you guys. And my father-in-law goes, man, you're right, Fred. This guy can't be trusted because the left loves him. And it turned out, we saw what happened with Fauci. He was, totally discredited. Now, a lot of people don't know he's discredited because of the whole psychological warfare that you're talking about.
Media information manipulation, yeah. Down selection of the congressional hearing, et cetera, in which he basically had a series of mea culpas.
And so he's a criminal, and if he's not arrested, that's going to discredit Donald Trump, in my opinion. If there's some people need to be arrested over all of that, and not in my opinion, it's a fact.
A lot of people believe that. So I've known, Tony Fauci has been like this dark lord hovering over my entire career, and it goes back to, I cut my teeth on the early days in AIDS in the early 1980s. I've watched Tony Fauci's development. And I actually extensively edited Bobby's Real Anthony Fauci book twice for him. Not credited for that. Tony. He still gets, I think it's $15 million a year in subsidy for security. They drive him around, and he gets the nice driver and the black SUV and all that good stuff.
Right. So, not that that's suspicious at all. That just seeing when the black SUVs start rolling up, that's when you get paranoid. Now, real quick, Fred, before you go, I just want to, since we're in the holiday season, everyone's in the holiday spirit. Please listen to Anthony Fauci during the holidays in 2021. Here we go.
If someone in your family isn't vaccinated, should you ask them not to show up?
Yes.
There. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Fauci. Just happy holidays, Anthony Fauci, for everybody out there. Wow.
So your editing that you did for Robert Kennedy's book, when you say edit, did you actually add stuff about Fauci? Did you take stuff out? I'm curious.
So this is how I first got to know Bobby, is he called me early on in the development of the book for some information and to help him understand certain things. And so that kind of is what kicked off our collaborative relationship. I added additional detail. I corrected a number of things. I was not involved in the Wuhan leak book, and there are a number of factual errors in that book that I would have caught had I been brought into that, but I wasn't. So, frankly, the truth is that the real Anthony Fauci was largely ghostwritten.
Okay, well, we're breaking news. Not only the Porsche, but now you mentioned our collective memory, the Wayback Machine being scrubbed. I've been of the feeling, even before COVID, frankly, just that there seems to be a separation. I'll just give you my layman's analysis, is that most of America, I shouldn't say most of America. How do I want to put this? Because I don't want to. Too many people are now 3 and 4 generations away from any concept of godliness and any understanding of the Bible, which was the source of information that at least in my life, and knowing my parents and my grandparents, that was the one source of information that held us all together, because we all knew we could trust that. And now that's 2 and 3 and 4 generations behind, and people we've lost that touchstone that was in the scripture. And my question about who does MAGA have that's going to help me understand what's true, it was a rhetorical question, because MAGA doesn't have anyone who can help me understand what's true. And I just want to encourage everyone, get Dr. Malone's book, but get into the Bible, because you can trust the Bible. So I just wanted to get that out there.
I gently object to that comment that MAGA doesn't have anybody. I'm a member of the Council on National Policy, which was founded by Ronald Reagan, which has a number of the intellectual leaders as members that are very influential in the MAGA movement. And I'm good friends with the people that run CPAC. They're devout Catholics. There is a CNP is deeply religious, theological. The Bob McEwen, who is kind of the intellectual core of that, is a very strong believer. CNP, we always kick off with a dedication. We always have prayers before meals. Charlie Kirk and his organization is very, very strong in their belief. So I'm not reprimanding you, but cautioning you to not not throw out the baby with the bathwater.
Just for our audience, this is a revealing moment, because in the massaged, controlled PsyWar media presentations, nobody's ever allowed to disagree. And so we're going to disagree, and you don't have to gently object. You can, I can take it. If you want to reprimand me. So everyone you just named, I'm sorry. I'm not that impressed. I don't trust them. And, I shouldn't say I don't trust them. I don't trust them to be the guardian of my hope for the future and my hopes and dreams for my children and my grandchildren. I'm going to keep that between me and God and the Bible. And I pray for them, because I know that they need prayer. So all those people that you mentioned who are going to achieve some level of authority in the government, hopefully, if this surreal moment actually ends up with them actually being appointed and approved, which just seems bizarre to me, but could very well happen. I'm going to pray for them. I'm going to pray for Donald Trump, pray for Robert Kennedy. There's so many things I disagree with Donald Trump and Robert Kennedy on, but I'm going to pray for them, and I'm going to hope that they read their Bible more. I think all of us could use more of that, Dr. Malone. I'm sure we can agree on that.
So Doug, I'm somebody who was, went to Bible school as a kid, and was brought up in the Episcopalian Church, which is, turned into almost nothing. it's about as woke as they get these days.
Sad. It's sad.
So, mea culpa on my part, but I do find, and many people around me, that you refer to the Bible as a common source of knowledge and wisdom and guidance. Many of the people around me would agree wholeheartedly with you on that. And I've found, as a scientist, trained in rigorous science, I would never use terms like evil before having gone through the barrel that I've been through over the last 4 years. But now it's central to my thinking. I find biblical references, and I often seek out people that know the Bible much better than me to help me to think and understand, because of the wisdom that is encapsulated there. And not just the wisdom, the language, the logic structure, these historic references to events, the Tower of Babel, that seem to be almost the only pillars that we can go back and touch to help inform our comprehension of what we're seeing around us. And my sense, I think you hit on something really deep just a moment ago. Historically, this was kind of a common cultural language within the United States and much of the West that, these days we're citing as cultural references something that everybody's seen on Netflix or whatever, Game of Thrones or whatever. We all have as a common cultural experience. And so we can use that for metaphors to communicate with each other. Historically, the Bible was that. And contained within that was a core ethical structure. To illustrate, the other day, Doug, I was writing a piece as the election had just happened on our Substack. We write daily. So I think there's like 17,000 essays now. But we were writing a piece, my wife and I, on what was transpiring and the transition that we were going to have because of the election. I was trying to find ways to communicate the need for caution and avoidance of the reflexive need that many have to retaliate, to get even. And I went through in various search engines for biblical quotes, looking for examples of the Bible endorsing retaliation or retribution in some way. I couldn't find hardly anything. Every single quote that I could find spoke about the need for forgiveness. Jesus's words, what was it? Should I forgive 3 times? And he says something like 7 times 7, or it's
70 times 7, yeah.
70 times 7, that was it. Yep. That all of the logic that's built into that is around as in terms of these kinds of moments. All I could find was teaching about the need for forgiveness, openness, extending an open hand, turning the other cheek. These multiple metaphors about that underpin core Christian theology, that this is a theology of openness, forgiveness, and the ability of the repentant to seek and to be absolved. When you talk about the loss of the role of the Bible and theology, it's not only the loss of this kind of common cultural theme that we could use to communicate with each other and kind of structure. People all the time talk about Americans are fundamentally good people. And that fundamental goodness, which distinguishes us from, say, Europeans or communist countries, springs exactly from this common commitment and experience.
Yes, well,
That,
it springs from the common understanding that the Bible teaches us is that we're not good people, we're fallen people. And that's why we look to the Bible and why we look to God and to Jesus Christ, was because America was dominated by people willing to admit that we're not really good, we need help to be good, and only God is good and He can help us. And that's more importantly, I think, than even the cultural and literary touchstone that the Bible was. It's that looking to our righteous Creator and admitting we're in a fallen state. It's the loss of that I think contributes as much as the loss of anything else. And so,
Doug, can I add another log on this? Metaphorically, having been building fires lately. So when I was writing the essay about the Maha and the transition, I'd had last weekend I had multiple calls from people that were really upset with what they were seeing in the appointments, and so this article was an attempt to kind of respond to that, provide some guidance and coaching, etc. And in it, I laid out a series of points. My second key point was that for the members of the community of faith, who are many in my circle, one of the things that we need to acknowledge and recognize is that we can't know the plan. The plan exists outside of us. So higher authority is God. Okay? And so when we're thinking about this transition and the launching of this administration and the trajectory this administration is going to have, my comment was that there's a season to everything, and this is a season for testing, and there will be a winnowing. We will learn over the next few years who is true and who is not. We will learn who is really committed and who is just leveraging things for power and fame and finance and other things. It'll all become apparent. And if you take this kind of a long view and release from yourself the angst of, I'm so angry I'm seeing these things. There's a repeated theme. I'm seeing these things. I'm so bothered about it. It's really got me all, and frankly, it was getting me twisted up inside, seeing what I was seeing and understanding more about how this is likely to play out over the long term with the people that I was seeing selected, et cetera. It allowed me to kind of release that tension and anxiety and just give it up to a higher authority, acknowledge that there is a plan here. We can't know it. We can't perceive it. I don't have a crystal ball that I can look into and say, this is the future. The future's unknown, but that it is being managed by a higher authority. And so we don't have to wrap ourselves up in all of that tension and anger and angst. We can open our souls if we acknowledge that we're not in control, much like what you're saying. We're not in control. The higher authority is, and have patience that this is a process, and there's going to have to be certain things happen. They aren't all going to be sweetness and light.
Yes, well, Dr. Malone, you're actually helping me. I've been working through. I had a lot of anger during the lockdowns, and I still to this. Well, I'm not even going to go there. So I've been working through trying to find grace for, like, when I'm in a grocery store at the airport and I see someone with a mask, I get angry. And I'm trying to understand how I can give these people grace. And of course, your explanations on how so many people have been victimized psychologically is going to help me with that, with learning to find grace. And I've been asking God to try to help me learn how to love people, because that's very difficult for me. But he has helped me greatly. And to your point that there's a higher power in control, I want to push back on that a little bit and remind everyone in the audience that the earth and the authority over the earth has been wickedly usurped by Satan and his minions, and God is not in control of everything right now. God has, in mercy, he is long-suffering and working to save as many people out of a very bad situation as he can. And at some point in the future, he will take back the heaven and the earth from Satan. But Satan and his minions, they have certain free reign right now. And so that's what we need to guard against. And the get to know your Bible, and we'll be able to make it through all this. And of course, I'll also link to Dr. Malone's Substack. So,
all right, guys, before we wrap this whole thing up, Doug, we can't avoid our interesting fact of the week. You know, we've got too many listeners and watchers, and they're going to be disappointed with us if we don't do this.
That's right.
So, are you ready, Doug?
I'm ready.
This may be one of the biggest softballs you've ever gotten, but we'll see.
Okay.
The first vaccine was for which disease?
Oh, the very first vaccine. So,
Which disease?
I'm thinking it was for smallpox. I got it right.
You got it right. The questions are usually a lot harder than that, Dr. Malone.
Yeah, that one has a long history, and it's been debated. We have a tradition in the West about the story of the smallpox vaccine, but it turns out that in the Far East, the taking of rather than the use of the milkmaid observation with cowpox in China and I believe Japan also, they used to take the crust from smallpox lesions, this dried crust, and they would put it in a like a little straw and blow it into people's noses. So
Wow.
that's actually if you're somebody embedded in the science of vaccinology, such as I am, you recognize that what they were doing was called mucosal vaccination, and that's a cutting edge topic right now. It was the norm thousands of years ago. You know, it's another one of these cases where nothing is new; it just gets recycled.
Nothing is new under the sun. So you're saying that the vaccine for smallpox wasn't really the first vaccine?
Well, that was also for smallpox. So that was.
Oh,
you know,
okay. Because I wasn't sure if I was going to have to go back and give Doug the.
Usually I get that.
So, Dr. Malone, I've just got to ask you, before we let you go, I want to respect your time. Are you afraid of mRNA technology? Do you think there's a future for it? Is it too dangerous? Tell me. I want to know.
Okay, so I'm gonna quote a interview that I gave to German press when I was in Geneva about 6 or 9 months ago. They asked me basically the same question: can RNA vaccines be made safe? And I said, well, pigs could fly if they only had wings, so we can speculate about what might happen, but it has not happened to date. Could they be used and deployed in ways that would be safe? The delivery tech that's being used, which is a core part of the problem, the cationic liposomes are toxic. and they get across the blood-brain barrier, and they're responsible for a lot of the distribution issues, and they have their own toxicity. And of course, spike is a toxin. Naked RNA is, as I published in Science magazine in 1991, I think it was, can be effective, and it's used in veterinary practice. The pseudouridine that Carrico and Weissman pioneered is also contributing to toxicity. So, yeah, it's possible that that things might be done to make a product that might have some beneficial effects that aren't overwhelmed by the toxic effects. But the current products, I went on record, I think almost 3 years ago. In my opinion, maybe this is one of the reasons why I'm not going to find myself in the administration, is just that, plus I don't want to go live in Rockville again and get off my farm, and spend my days being backstabbed by bureaucrats. Putting all that aside, in theory, there's always a way to make a product that would have a beneficial benefit to risk ratio. But these products are not that. They should be withdrawn from the market, in my opinion, and I said so very clearly in a press conference years ago, together with other of my peers that also will not be asked to be part of the administration. So there's the short answer is could be, maybe, coulda, shoulda, woulda. I abandoned the technology as an academic in the late 90s because I was doing animal studies and I couldn't overcome the toxicity problems.
So, Dr. Malone,
Oh, wow.
You've got to help me. I don't want to misquote you, and perhaps I have, and so I want to clarify. Early on in the vaccine rollouts, and when the mandates started, and I first discovered you, I thought I heard you say that I abandoned this technology, or I thought I heard you say this should have never been approved, and the reason mRNA technology has never made it past early clinical trials is because all the animals died. That's what I thought I heard you say.
I think you might be crossing over with some comments that were made by other people. And people would take comments that I would make and then come out with their own versions or synopses of them. All the animals died refers to very specific studies. In our case, of course, all the animals died because they were sacrificed in order to do the analyses. It was highly toxic. I got to just wave at my grandchild back there who just came into the studio. But the reason, what I was referring to was that the products should not have been brought into widespread deployment in humans because they were neither safe nor effective. And another thing that people often criticize me for is early on, I said that limited deployment, this is part of the position I had with Peter Navarro that was consistent with the Great Barrington, was that limited deployment in high-risk individuals made sense. At the time, that's what the data showed. Since then, what's been shown is that the adverse events, in other words, the risk part, goes up at the same time that the potential benefits go up, and you still end up with an upside-down risk-benefit ratio. So the risks are greater than the benefits, even when you get into the older populations, because they become more susceptible to the adverse events. So that's I've had to shift my position throughout this as more data have come in.
That's science. That's real science.
Well, and that's, hence the title of our broadcast. But that people will grab old quotes and then weaponize them against me today, saying, well, you said this. Well, yeah, at the time, that's what the data were consistent with, and then we got more data. And what should have happened is we should have got more data and then made the decisions about whether or not to recommend it safe for pregnancy in juveniles and et cetera, et cetera. But instead, we put the cart before the horse, and the rest is history. One of the greatest experiments, I wrote this essay, I think it's one of my most popular in Substack. I wrote it about 2.5 years ago, speculating, will the largest experiment in human history turned out to be a failure, and I think the answer's in. It's yes. It was a huge.
Well, so Dr. Malone, we're extremely grateful that you came on and shared all of this with Real Science Radio.
Amen.
Again, Dr. Malone's new book is PsyWar: Enforcing the New World Order. It will provide a link for that. Highly recommend it. You've really helped us, open our eyes on, behind the curtain, what's going on with a lot of this stuff, and help. And you've provided. Yeah, exactly. And it provides a way to. You provide a way for us to help navigate through this, and of course, as Doug has said, that first and foremost, we trust the Bible, and when you do that, then that's gonna go a long ways towards seeing through all of this subterfuge and all the stuff that's happening to us through Google, Amazon, and social media, and just the attacks we're facing. So, again, I thank you and your wife, Dr. Jill, for all the encouraging work you're doing in exposing this, and I can't say thanks enough for coming on our show. I really appreciate it. And, I want to let you get back to your farm, and you got your grandkids there. So that's a God's blessing.
Thanks for having me on. And, God bless to you too. And remember, the way we get out of this is by recommitting to family, community, faith, ethics, all those old things. If we strengthen our communities, then the ability for this kind of manipulative technology to control our minds and our thoughts and our beliefs and all that goes away. That's how we beat them, is we return back to the basics.
Amen.
All right.
Amen. Renew your mind. Renew your mind by the washing of the water of the Word. And I want to finish for all of the people that we've been discussing who are deploying these PsyWar tactics against us. I just want to quote Matthew 18, chapter 7. Woe unto the world because of offenses. For it must needs be that offenses come. But woe to that man by whom the offense cometh. Woe unto you, all of you PsyWar operators out there. Dr. Malone, thank you. We'll link to your Substack, all of your books. God bless you. Let's keep the channels of communication open.
Thanks, guys.
So for Dr. Robert Malone and my co-host Doug McBurney, I'm Fred Williams of Real Science Radio. May God bless you.